If you love entertainment, current events, and Hollywood, don't miss Creator to Creators, hosted by the filmmaker Meosha Bean, known for the Shudder hit documentary Horror Noir and the acclaimed film Anatomy of an Anti-Hero, Redemption. This show features interviews with filmmakers and creatives from around the globe. Join the fun with guest celebrities and gain valuable insights. Subscribe now and follow Creator to Creators.
Hi, guys. Welcome to another episode of Creators to Creators today. Today, we have a special guest.
John Jackson Miller.
Welcome.
Hey, glad to be here.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for coming on. I really love going back to the beginning. I always say the beginning charts our trajectory in life. Our little habits that we pick up along the way follow us into our adulthood. So tell me a little bit about your childhood. What was that like? And how did you find your way into doing the things that you're doing now?
I was born and raised in Memphis, Tennessee. My mother was a grade school librarian, and where other people's mothers may have thrown their comic books away, my mother encouraged me to keep all of mine and keep them in order. So I had all of that. I had a father who was somebody who worked with electronics, so he introduced me to science. And I had a big sister who was into pop culture long before I was. So she was able to introduce me to, music and movies and games and things. And in particular, Star Wars, which came out when I was 9 years old. And even though it was, a huge movie, it back in those days, the films only opened in one or two theaters. And so it took a long time for us to actually get in to see Star Wars. And so when I did write my novel Star Wars Kenobi, which was my first New York Times bestseller, the one that tells the story of Obi-Wan Kenobi's first month in exile on Tatooine, I dedicated that novel to my sister Kathy for making sure her kid brother got in to see the movie.
I love that. Were you anticipating New York Times bestseller? How does one just get that? I'm sure that was just that was an amazing feeling.
Well, I have no illusions. It is Star Wars or Star Trek or whatever I happen to be working with. Marvel, and currently I'm working with Warner Brothers, Batman. These are the things that I do are pre-sold in a sense because there's an audience that is built in for these characters.
Right.
What I do is I write comic books and novels, prose fiction, that almost exclusively what I've done is stuff that ties in to other people's worlds, like Star Wars, so I still do my best, and everybody does. And in fact, it's actually a little bit more difficult to do the kind of writing that we do because we have to conform to people's expectations.
Right.
And it's almost like taking over the role of another soap opera actor or something, playing the same character. I have to make sure that everything I do sounds like what they're accustomed to.
Mm-hmm.
And yet I also have to do stories that, add something. I'm not just there to connect the dots. This is not just, like a Mad Libs version of Star Wars where, every story will have a different, Sith Lord or planet destroying device or something like that. We try to actually do stories that will give people something new, and it'll give me a place for my creativity to sort of show through. And people can kind of tell a book that's by me, whether it's Star Wars or Star Trek or something else. It kind of shines through.
Yeah, I love that. And yeah, I'm sure, I mean, multiple iconic franchises that you've written across, right? Star Wars, Star Trek, Batman, and more. I can imagine like just the adapting your storytelling approach for each universe is, I'm sure it's like like different, you know.
Well, it starts with being a fan. I mentioned Star Wars back in the day, and of course, back then I bought the comic books and the novels, and what those books, the purpose they served back in the '60s for Star Trek, and then in the '70s for Star Wars, and then the '80s. The purpose those books served was to sort of keep people interested in between the movies, to give people a way to engage with whatever the fandom they were in
Mhm.
was in, with new material, with new stories. And in part, one of the reasons that this sort of thing was necessary is because there was no way to actually continue seeing Star Wars after you left the theater back then. We didn't have streaming. Star Wars doesn't even appear on cable TV until 1983, after it's been out for 6 years. So if you want to relive these things, you've got the comic books, you've got the novels, and what has sort of changed is in the last 25 years. The actual work actually has begun to supplement and
Mhm.
elaborate on and add to the story, to the overall story world, so that my Star Wars novels, including my most recent one called The Living Force, which it takes place 1 year before The Phantom Menace and stars the entire Jedi Council.
Nice.
This is an official story. This story happened.
Mm.
They will be referring to it. They have been referring to it in other stories. So,
That.
for example, I actually wrote the very first novel in the Disney era of what the fans would call canon, or the story arc. And I have a character in there, Ray Sloan, and she is an Imperial captain, and she has since appeared in the comic books. She has appeared in the Star Wars Squadrons video game. She also has a Lego figure. And, and none of this had anything to do with me. And
Right.
so, and every time they talk about, well, they're going to do another season of Ahsoka, and maybe Angela Bassett will be cast or something like that. Everybody asks
That
me,
would be
is that
amazing.
they'll say, they'll say, is that going to be Ray Sloan? Is that going to be Ray Sloan? And I'm like, well, she's about the right age for the character at that time. I don't know. I really don't. But it is fun. I mean, when I wrote Iron Man 20 years ago,
Wow.
but one of my characters wound up being the villain in Ant-Man the Wasp, and so they flew me and my artist, who lives in Argentina, to the premiere of the movie, even though
That's amazing.
yeah, even though it'd been like 15 years since we did the comic book. So anyway, yeah, so it is fun, and again, it starts with being a fan, because I have written, you
Like
know
original worlds and
well,
stuff.
well, no, I've written for worlds that I'm not a fan of.
Okay.
So like video game. I've done comics for Mass Effect and Halo, and those just one that just came out. It's called Skull and Bones, for a pirate ship game. And again, I'm because I have the toolbox.
Right.
I can take a property that I haven't actually, seen or engaged with, and write about it, because in some cases, yeah, I'm writing about a Star Wars project that isn't out yet, or a Star Trek characters that aren't out yet, in whatever the show is. So I can do that. It's not quite so easy. It's not quite so fun.
Mm.
And so when I did last October, my most recent novel, which is called Batman Resurrection. Well, that novel is the first novel that ties into the Tim Burton Batman movies. So it,
Nice.
so it takes place in between Batman and Batman Returns.
Oh,
And
cool.
I saw that movie in the theater 12 times. I reviewed it for my college newspaper. I was there the first night, and I have lots to say about this film. I've memorized this film.
I love
It
that.
was so easy for me to walk into, and we just today, as we're recording this, we announced the sequel, which comes out this October, which is called
Awesome.
Batman Revolution.
Awesome.
And Revolution is another sequel in the sense that it follows the Resurrection novel, but it also happens in between Batman and Batman Returns. So
Mm.
it's in that area in between, and so we get to see characters from the first movie,
Ooh, nice.
like Alexander Knox the reporter, and Vicky Vale is in Resurrection,
Very cool.
and we get to see a lot of Billy D. Williams, Harvey Dent character,
Nice.
and then we also are able to see the Christopher Walken character from the second movie, Max Schreck. We get to see Selena Kyle, the
Wow.
Michelle Pfeiffer character,
Yeah.
before she becomes Catwoman. And again,
Amazing.
the only rule here is she can't have met Bruce Wayne yet because they haven't met.
Right.
But
Ama- Amazing.
but that's kind of what I do. And you asked about original work. I've really only written one novel of my own called Overdraft, and part of the challenge is that was many years ago. Part of the challenge is that if you're going to write something for yourself, almost always you have to have most of it done before you can take it somewhere.
Right.
And it is just so much easier. Maybe I'm lazy, but it's so much easier for me to have a property that is already out there. They approach me, and I've been told by agents, if you do get offered something from Star Wars or Star Trek or Marvel or or Batman,
Mhm.
don't say no.
Yeah, exactly.
And so they're still asking, and but again, I try to do the best work that I can. The kind of novels that we do, this kind of thing is not really looked on very well by the critical by the critics, in the sense of you'll never see a Star Wars or a Star Trek novel win a Hugo Award or even be nominated.
I see.
They it's this I think the sense is that this material is pre-sold, or came from somewhere else or something like that.
Mm.
But I would put a lot of our books up against just about anything. They do take a lot of work. They are harder in many senses because the things we're writing about are moving, they're changing as we're writing about them.
I love that.
TV shows will be going on. I mean, I wrote the first appearance of the when the characters from Strange New Worlds.
Yeah.
I wrote the first novel with the Anson Mount version of Captain Pike, for Star Trek, while his first appearances were appearing on TV. And
Wow.
even though we worked very hard to try to make sure that everything meshed up,
Yeah.
I was really, as episodes were coming on TV, I was having to change what I was doing. So
Amazing.
it's not the easiest thing. Again, it is something though that we do have our own sort of organization, the International Association of Media Tie-in Writers, where we have an annual thing, and I'm pleased that my books have been recognized several times there.
Love
But
that.
the bigger deal is the fans, and
Absolutely.
I go to conventions about one a month. About to head to one in Seattle here this weekend,
Awesome.
and we have so many folks who tell us that they really rely on the escape that we provide,
Mhm.
and that they really enjoy the sort of thing that we do, and particularly my style of writing. I do a very sort of an atmospheric kind of thing where if you really want to feel like what it's like to live in Gotham City where a Batman exists, you're going to get that in
Mm,
one of my books. If you want to know what it's like to to live out in the desert with Obi-Wan Kenobi, you're going to get that. I
I
do.
love that.
Yeah, I do try to give people an immersive experience.
Yeah.
And actually that's something that sort of happened as we hit the pandemic. My books got longer.
Mm.
And because I began to think, okay, people are going to want cozier reads.
Sure. Yeah.
And in fact, I when they approached me to do a novel for the Star Trek Picard series, I said I would do it on one condition, that the book can be fun, that it feature the character, the character Cristobal Rios, who we see in that show, who is just a very fun character to write. And I said, hey, for a change, I didn't want anybody to die in the story. And in fact, that I've done a few novels now where as compared with some of the other stories I've done, Star Wars. I mean, you imagine there's lots of violence going on. I really have sort of toned down some of that action and made the action scenes mean more when they happen.
For sure. What's your writing routine like? Do you do you outline heavily, or do you like prefer a more like organic approach?
Well, this is a thing that if you're doing tie-in fiction, licensed fiction, the licensors, whether it's Paramount for Star Trek, Disney for Star Wars, Warner Brothers for Batman, the licensors require you to have a full outline,
Mm,
basically explaining what you're doing. That helps them to know that first of all you're on brand, and you're not doing something with their characters that is not true to those characters.
right,
But also what it does is it lets them know, okay, here's something you might collide with that we're doing.
right,
Or here's a place, and this happens more and more. Here's a place where you can insert a character that might be in a TV show or something soon. And we can kind of add this sort of Easter egg in there.
right.
So I have to do a full outline. That is the part of the story process that I hate the most because I'm ready to get in and start writing dialogue. I want to write the scenes. I want to
Right.
write the moments, and I have to figure out the mechanics of these stories. And unfortunately, or fortunately for the readers, unfortunately for me, another thing that I'm known for is sort of these complicated puzzle box mysteries that have lots of moving parts
Hmm.
and lots of things going on. And so, for example, right now I'm writing the Batman Revolution novel. Well, my villain is the Riddler, and
Oh, I love that.
so you
Great.
might imagine that there was about a 4 month process before I even started writing the first scene.
Wow.
And and so now that I'm in the writing, this is the easier part in the sense that I know what I'm doing
Right.
because it's all plotted out. But the thing is, I have to actually make progress every single day. Yeah, this is a book that's probably going to be 150,000 words long,
Wow.
and I need to, I have a spreadsheet where I keep track of how many words I do each day and how many chapters I've
Amazing.
gone through. And I actually have it set up so it compares with all of my previous novel processes because I'm on like my 13th novel now. And I can look and say, okay, you know, I'm about to leave for this convention. Where am I relative to when I was on the previous novel last year? And I'm glad to say I'm further ahead.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. That's
But
awesome.
it kind of tells me how much I have to panic.
Right. Absolutely. Listen, I bow down to you. That's incredible. I mean, I direct, films and I get like I don't know how you do it, but I'm like I don't like writing. I don't like the process of it. Like I know what I want. Like
Yeah.
I can draw it out because I can like completely draw the storyboard and have the whole movie in my
Oh
head.
yeah.
But like I'm like when it comes to like writing it, I'm like, what the heck? My attention span is so short. I'm like, oh, a butterfly or oh, coffee or something.
What I hate about it is it's like time travel in that I'll get going on it and I'll look up and it'll be several hours later.
Yeah.
But it's the way it works. And I didn't even really mention, I also do comic books. I haven't done quite as many as I had, but I write the scripts. I don't draw. I've been asked not to draw. I'm
Love
no good at
that.
that. But that's a totally different toolbox.
I'm sure.
And so I'm not just having to write so that the reader will understand. I'm having to write so that the artist will understand. Often the artists are not in the same country with me, much less the same city.
Mm.
And so yeah, I have had to try to refine what I'm doing. I've been doing this for about 20 years now, and I have to say I greatly prefer the part that I'm going to deal with this weekend, meeting the fans and
Yeah.
signing the books, and
Love that.
seeing people cosplay as my characters. That's happened a few times, and
Oh,
that's
that's
always
fun.
amazing.
I love that. I love that. And I'm sure that's rewarding, right? Being a creative is like, you just never know the people that you reach and touch, right? Until you actually see them and they're like, oh my God, this actually did whatever, and it's
Yeah,
like, we love what we do so much, but to be able to give that to someone it's amazing, right?
yeah. I wouldn't want to do anything else, and
I
I
know.
don't know what the word retirement means.
I love that. How does Star Wars and Star Trek differ in terms of world building and character development from a writer's perspective?
Well, again, I'm elaborating on worlds that already exist in some cases.
I
And so what I will do is I will look for a corner of the established world that has something that either I can use or it has some space that I can move into.
okay. I
So for example, the Living Force novel for Star Wars that I just did, we jokingly refer to it as the Jedi Council on spring break. Um, Qui-Gon Jinn walks into the Jedi Council chamber and he says, when was the last time you people helped anyone? You sit in this room, you pontificate, you argue with one another, and you have no idea what's happening to the people.
Yeah.
And so Mace Windu says, "Challenge accepted," and they go on a trip to a planet that is in need, and they go on these various missions of mercy. Well, what I did is I found a planet that already existed in Star Wars, but had never been fleshed out.
Oh, like
Uh,
explored or something.
yeah, exactly. And
Love that.
so what I did was not only did I, incorporate this planet into my story, I created all the islands and everything that I needed to be on the planet, and then I went to the extreme of I designed the maps for it, and we included the map in the book.
Cool.
And if, in fact, if people get the Barnes and Noble special edition, it's got a poster of the map that is annotated with all these tourist,
Oh,
descriptions of
neat.
all the place. Oh yeah, that's the Living Force, and I had already done that as well with my most recent Star Trek novel, which was the first Strange New Worlds novel called The High Country. Again, the characters, Captain Pike and Uhura and Spock, they crash land on a planet. They're lost. There are actually 5 maps in that book where we discover the world as they do. And again, that was a case where I said, okay, just let me create this planet so I can do whatever I want with it. And yeah, now sometimes you can't always do that. Sometimes you're locked into something. I mean, Obi-Wan Kenobi is not going to be leaving Tatooine, while he's watching Luke Skywalker.
Right.
Well, it's not happening on my watch anyway. He's there. So, but otherwise, yeah, you are looking for um, ways to work within the world. You have to match the laws of physics, the laws of how things work in whatever universe it is. So in Star Wars, the Force works in specific ways. The lightsabers do specific things. I have to know enough about the world, to know, what's correct. Likewise, in Star Trek, there's all these, gadgets that if I'm going to do something that hasn't been done before or that people are not expecting, I have to go back almost like a lawyer and say, okay, here's something. Can you beam a character off of a spaceship when that spaceship is cloaked? And you'd think not. And I said, okay, but let's go back to Star Trek 4 in the scene where they're in Golden Gate Park with the Klingon ship, and it happens twice. And so yes, I can do it. It's
I love that. I love that.
so it's like citing precedent.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. Yeah, you've written so many things like Halo, Mass Effect, Planet
Yep.
of the Apes. Are there any particular franchises that you haven't worked on yet, but you love to tackle?
Not really. I mean, the Batman one was one I didn't even know to ask for.
Okay.
Because it's not simply writing Batman, it's writing a sliver of Batman, the particular part that is the part that I love the most, the Tim Burton part of it.
Yeah.
And I had no idea that would even be a possibility.
Yeah.
It didn't make any sense at all that it would happen. And when I got the offer, it was wonderful. The things that I haven't been able to do are sort of very personal boutique kind of things that I'm not sure anybody would buy. I love the TV show Max Headroom back in the 80s, which is sort of a science fiction show set on Earth. But I don't think anybody would pay for that now. It's too many years down the road. There are characters that I haven't done anything for Marvel in 20 years. I wrote Captain America in one scene. Would love to write more someday. I haven't written Spider-Man at all. Haven't written Superman. These would be interesting things. But I also know that I need to get some of my own stuff out at some point.
Yes, I can't wait to see more of that because I'm sure that would be a very interesting, just like to see your world in your head. Like, what would you
Well,
do
the
with?
one time I did it, I really enjoyed being able to create my own rules for how space travel worked and things like that. So I was not locked into the same kinds of scenes that I have, in Star Wars and Star Trek and other things, that I could do something a little bit different.
Absolutely. And I love that. I'm curious about just like you've studied comic books, sales, and history extensively.
Oh,
How
yeah.
has the industry changed over the years?
Well, we went from something where, comic books in the very beginning were just a way to keep the presses rolling on the weekend for newspapers.
Mm,
The earliest comics were just, reprints of newspaper strips. And then, of course, Superman, Batman, they lead sort of this charge of, new content, such that by the time we get to the early 50s, comics are something that everybody is reading. People of every age, boys, girls. It's very much a mass medium. And then just what sort of happens is that it goes the other direction as the market, the newsstand market, selling comics in grocery stores used to happen, drug stores, convenience stores. That all sort of went away.
mhm.
And the way that we saved ourselves is that the fans that were buying those comics, they opened up comic shops. They made deals with the publishers to
Mhm.
buy those comics directly. And that is where all the comic shops came from.
Nice.
And that created sort of a new wave of creativity because those comic books were no longer beholden to the sales rules in terms of, they used to have the comics code stamp on them, making sure that they, didn't have certain content in them. Well, the 80s, which is sort of really the blossoming of all of these ideas. This is the period where really Batman, becomes a sort of grittier character like he was in the 1930s.
Right.
That sort of darkness is what we see on the screen in the Tim Burton movies. That is made possible because we have these fans who are writing comics for other fans, and they're being sold by fans, and that develops. And comics nearly collapsed sort of again in the mid '90s, because we just had way too many of those shops. But one of the ways that we got back out of it is, we created these other ways to sell comics: the graphic novels, the compendiums, the bound editions. When people speak of graphic novels, 90% of the ones that are out there are actually just collections of individual comic books, just
Mm,
reprinted.
right.
And so a book of mine, contrast this. If you wrote a comic book in 1957, if it was not bought that month, that issue would have been destroyed. I mean,
Right.
the only way to ever find it would be just to get it from another collector.
Mm,
But when I wrote the Knights of the Old Republic comic series in 2007, 50 years later, well, those comics have been reprinted dozens of times in multiple formats, in hardcover, softcover,
mm,
languages all around the world. It has never really been out of print for 20 years. And that is wonderful, because it has let a new generation of readers discover this work that I did all that time ago. But it also is just something where, it has made the comics business more self-sustaining.
sure.
It
Yeah.
has changed things such that the individual sales of the single issue are not as important anymore. When the I guess it was Willow Wilson did the Ms. Marvel comics
Hmm.
a
Yeah.
few years ago. People kept looking at the sales numbers they could see, which were for the individual issues, and they were saying, "Oh, well, these numbers are not huge." Well, they didn't have to be, because by that point, so many of the comics had been collected into special editions. There were 500,000 graphic novels containing those comics being sold,
Wow.
that had been sold. I mean, it was a huge number, and really the individual issue, the purpose of it is still as the purpose is today. It allows the artist to keep on, the writer and the artist to keep on making money and keep on feeding themselves
Right.
while they do this big, huge project.
Right.
And that is something where comic books have a strength over some other media, which is that we can take a huge story and we can sell it to you a little bit at a time, and then we
Right.
can keep selling it to you again and again.
Got it. I see. Interesting. What advice would you give to those that want to get into this business of like writing and writing for like franchises?
Well, just the basic writing, I always say, write anything. I was writing those reviews for my college newspaper, and in there, before I got to do what I'm doing, I ended up running trade magazines for the lumber industry, and my interest in lumber is exactly zero. But
Mhm.
it allowed me to build up a resume of having written for an audience and having them understand what I'm doing. Uh, and until I eventually moved into writing, about comics for magazines for comics and editing them, and moving into these things. Now, writing for the actual franchises, this is a lot trickier, because we're only looking at a small number of jobs for this sort of thing,
Right.
a small number of opportunities. There's only two or three novels a year coming out for Star Trek right now.
Wow.
And these things used to be more like monthly, but now of course they're hardcover. They're much bigger deals. But the thing that we have to caution people about is, it is what we call licensed fiction, which is, the publishers are paying for a license to get to actually use these characters.
Right.
They are obligated legally uh, not to let just anybody, send them in an idea. They must go out. They must, invite whoever it is that they've sort of vetted and have a contractual relationship with. so that they can bring us in and get us in on something. You will never ever get your fan fiction published by the official publisher. It just doesn't work that way. They're not even legally allowed to look at it.
Okay.
And so that doesn't mean that fan fiction is bad. It's great practice. As I've said,
Right.
anything you do where you're writing for other people to actually read it and give you feedback is helpful. But in terms of getting it published, I advise people create their own worlds,
Yeah.
or even if you have to, there's some very popular projects that are very clearly fan fictions that they sort of shaved the serial numbers off of and changed the character names
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and made them their own thing.
For sure. For sure. No, I love that. Thank you. That's great advice. Gosh, this was such a great conversation. I really just enjoyed hearing about this world and knowing more about it. Thank you.
Well, I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Where can people follow you on social media to find everything you have going on?
Okay, let's see. On Twitter, I am JJM Faraway. On Facebook, Instagram, and Threads, I am John Jackson Miller. On Blue Sky, I am farawaypress.com, which is also the name of my website, where I have behind the scenes essays on most of my work.
Nice. Awesome. Thank you so much. It was such a pleasure
I appreciate it.
talking to you. And thank you all for listening. And always remember to live, love, laugh. We'll see you guys next time.